former Deputy Foreign Minister of Italy, and members of Parliament. And I would also like to especially acknowledge our Chinese friends from the US, Australia, Taiwan, and many friends from around the world. Today, on the 53rd anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising Day and the 4th anniversary of the 2008 mass protest in Tibet, I offer tribute to the brave people who have sacrificed so much for Tibet. Despite 53 years of occupation by the People's Republic of China, the Tibetan spirit and identities inside Tibet remains unbroken. On this occasion, I pay homage to His Holiness the Dalai Lama for his vision, leadership, and benevolence. I also pay my deepest respect and gratitude to our elders for the contribution and tireless efforts that have sustained our movement's growth and dynamism over the past 50 years. 1 year ago, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama announced the transfer of his political power to a democratically elected leader, Tibetans were apprehensive and implored him to reconsider. Today, the world recognizes and applauds His Holiness's vision and magnanimous decision. Tibetans are making a smooth transition with a free, fair, and multi-candidate 2011 parliamentary and governorship elections that involve exiled and diaspora Tibetans in 40 countries. I'm deeply honored by the spiritual blessings, legitimacy, political authority, and continuity bestowed upon me by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In his statement at my inauguration ceremony on August 8, 2011, His Holiness said, "When I was young, an elderly regent Rinpoche handed over Sikhyong to me, and today I'm handing over Sikhyong to young Lobsang Sengye. In doing this, I fulfilled my long cherished goal." I'm enormously moved by the solidarity and endorsements from Tibetans inside Tibet during the election and since assuming my political post. I have had many moving encounters with hundreds of Tibetans from Tibet as they generously offered their blessings and support. Blessed by the historic transfer of political power from His Holiness, empowered by the mandate received from the people, and buoyed by the support and solidarity from Tibetans inside Tibet, I can say with pride and conviction that the Central Tibetan Administration legitimately represents and speaks for 6 million Tibetans. Beijing's view that a generation change in leadership may weaken the Tibetan freedom movement has not and will never materialize. The resiliency of the Tibetan spirit, combined with a coming generation of educated Tibetans, will provide dynamic leadership and sustain the movement till freedom is restored in Tibet. If the Chinese government's claim that Tibetans enjoy freedom and equality are true, then it should allow democratic, transparent, free and fair elections in Tibet. In 53 years of Chinese occupation, no Tibetans has ever held the party secretary post of the so-called Tibet Autonomous Region. Chinese hold majority of the decision-making position in all branches of the government and constitute more than 50% of the public sector workforce. 70% of the public sector enterprises are owned or operated by Chinese. 40% of Tibetan high school and college graduates are unemployed. The Tibet issue concerns far more than the rights and welfare of 6 million Tibetans. It impacts the entire planet. The unique Tibetan culture, with its rich language, spirituality, and history must be protected. The Tibetan Plateau is the world's third pole, as it contains the largest ice fields outside the 2 poles. Tibetan glaciers, the source of 10 major rivers, affect the lives of more than 1.5 billion people. Billions of dollars worth of mineral resources are exploited annually to fuel China's economy. Decades of logging have reduced Tibet's pristine forests covered by half. Clearly, the management of this global common and the Tibetan people's traditional role as its stewards ought to be a planetary concern. When China invaded Tibet in 1949, it promised to usher in a socialist paradise. In actuality, Tibetans are treated as second-class citizens. When Tibetans gather peacefully and demand basic rights, as outlined in the Chinese constitution, they are arrested, fired upon, and killed, as in the January 23rd, 24th peaceful protests when Chinese were celebrating the New Year. The Communist Party cadre members in Tar have been ordered to prepare for war against the Tibetan protesters. In stark contrast, in Wukan, in Guangdong province, protests by Chinese people lasted weeks. Their grievances were addressed. One of the protest leaders was appointed as the new leader for the village, and provincial authorities even supported free village elections. Intellectuals, artists, and leaders in Tibet are being arbitrarily arrested and imprisoned. Thousands of pilgrims recently returning from India have been detained and many have disappeared. Tibetans, including monks and nuns, are forced to denounce the Dalai Lama and attend patriotic re-education classes. Foreigners and international media are barred from Tibetan areas. A Chinese scholar recently observed there are more Chinese than Tibetans, more police than monks, more surveillance cameras than windows in Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet. The entire region is under undeclared martial law. China has built many airfields in Tibet, stationed many more divisions of the PLA, begun expanding the railway lines of the borders of neighboring countries, and dispatched thousands of paramilitary forces into Tibetan areas. Tibet has become one of the most militarized areas in the region. Today, there is no space for any conventional protests, such as hunger strikes, demonstrations, and even peaceful gatherings in Tibet. Tibetans are therefore taking extreme actions, such as the one by 26 Tibetans who have committed self-immolation since 2009. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the CTA have always discouraged such drastic actions. However, despite our pleas, Tibetans continue to self-immolate with 14 cases already in 2012. Fault lies squarely with the hardline leaders in Beijing, so does the solution. The self-immolations are an emphatic rejection of the empty promises of the so-called socialist paradise. The Tibetan struggle is not against the Chinese people or China as a nation. It is against the PRC's government's policies. China must acknowledge the depth of the problem in Tibet and understand they cannot be solved through violence. To address the tragedy in Tibet, I call on Beijing to accept our middle way policy, which seeks genuine autonomy for Tibetans within the framework of the Chinese constitution and as proposed in the memorandum and note of 2008 and 2010 respectively. Hong Kong and Macau have been granted high degree of autonomy. Despite resistance in Taiwan, China has offered more autonomy for Taiwan. Why are Tibetans still not granted genuine autonomy as stipulated in the Chinese constitution? We hope that China's upcoming leaders will initiate genuine change and that they find the wisdom to admit the government's long-standing hardline policy has failed. We have chosen to move down a mutually beneficial path even though Tibet historically enjoyed independent status, and Tibetans have the right to self-determination according to international law. Concerned Chinese citizens and intellectuals should make an effort to seek the truth and understand why Tibetans are protesting and self-immolating. Dialogue and a peaceful resolution to the Tibet issue are in the best interest of China, the Chinese people, and Tibetans. We stand ready to send envoys to resume the dialogue process, even though the Chinese envoy belonging to the United Front Work Department has of late invested far more energy traveling around the world and making outrageous attacks on His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the CTA, led by Tripa. In the process, they have actually further internationalized the Tibet issue. A key reason for creating the United Nations was the pursuit of human rights. I urge the UN to live up to its objective and address the crisis in Tibet by appointing a special rapporteur and visiting Tibet. The international community and media must send a fact-finding delegation into Tibet to remove the veil of censorship and disinformation campaign. Even the capital of North Korea, Pyongyang, has an international media presence, which is not the case in Lhasa, says Reporters Without Borders. I appeal to the officials and member states of ASEAN and SAARC to include the Tibet issue in your agenda, given Tibet's geopolitical and environmental significance affecting billions of Asians. A China that is able to address the Tibet issue will make it a more peaceful neighbor and contribute to harmony and stability in the region. To my fellow Tibetans, now is the time to show solidarity and support with our brothers and sisters in Tibet. We must give education top priority so that educated and community-minded Tibetans will provide dynamic leadership and sustain the Tibetan movement till freedom is restored in Tibet. The Kasha would like to request that mantras and prayers be recited every Wednesday for those who have sacrificed their lives for the Tibetan cause. Younger Tibetans should embrace and celebrate our proud heritage and identity by wearing, speaking, and eating Tibetan every Wednesday. Let us make 2012 a Tibet lobby year. In this Tibetan New Year, I call upon all Tibetans and friends to reach out to elected representatives at the state and national levels in your countries. Invite and educate them about Tibet and the efforts of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the CTA. Generate debate on Tibet and get legislations passed in support of Tibet and Tibetan people. Initiate activities that raise the profile of Tibetan democracy and visibility of Tibetan political leadership and the CTA. The 14th Kasha will make maximum efforts to realize our goal as well as take steps to prepare the Tibetan people and institutions for the 21st century under the guiding principles of unity, innovation, and self-reliance. The Kasha again urges all Tibetans and friends participating in various solidarity activities to ensure that the activities are undertaken peacefully, in accordance with local laws, and with dignity. Please remember, non-violence and democracy are two of our constant principles. The Tibetan people at current Kasha are extremely blessed to have the continuing presence and wisdom of His Holiness the Dalai Lama